We will reconvene the October 11th meeting of the Caroline County Board of Supervisors. At this time, we have our public comment section of the agenda. At this time, we allow anyone who would like to speak to the board regarding any matter that's not a public hearing to do so. So is there anyone who would like to address the board at this time? Is there anyone who would like to address the board at this time? And as you come forward, if you'll please just state your name and your voting district, we would appreciate it.
Karen Lambert, Reedy Church, yes. Voting district.
Thank you.
I think part of my reason that I'm here is that I feel there needs to be more transparency in the county business, how it's conducted, and the speed that the information gets to the citizens, and a little more straightforwardness on everyone's part. I've had several dealings, and I don't think that when I have to make decisions, I think I should be provided with all the information possible that may pertain to the area that I'm researching or asking questions about, so that I can make an informed decision. Is that good enough? And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the board at this time? Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the board at this time? Is there anyone else? Okay. Hearing none, we'll declare the public comment section to be closed. Mrs. Lambert, without going into further details about what your concern of transparency or the information that you need, I'm going to ask Mr. Parton to contact you directly and to make sure that we understand exactly what you need. It was my understanding the board was as transparent as it could be. Most of the things we do are put on the website recently, and there may be things that we're not aware of, so I'm going to ask Mr. Parton to directly contact you, and we will address your concerns. Okay? Thank you very much. Who's got number 6? I don't have my thing up. Okay, we'll move to agenda item number 6, which is our public hearing on the proposed ordinance to amend Article 12, License Tax, Chapter 103, Taxation of the Code of Caroline County, to exempt from the county license tax businesses with annual gross receipts of $150,000 or less. Who has it? Is it you? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as you said, tonight's public hearing is to consider an amendment to Article 12 of Chapter 103 of the County Code to exempt businesses with annual gross receipts of $150,000 or less from paying any license fee or tax, otherwise known as the B-poll tax. The proposed amendment would triple the current exemption in place, which is $50,000 in gross receipts. All other aspects of the ordinance would remain the same, including the need for all businesses, regardless of the threshold, to file the paperwork with the Commissioner of the Revenue. Tonight's public hearing is considered to be the second hearing under the board's rules of order, and under those rules, the board can either conduct the public hearing and delay action, or by a vote of a majority of members can waive those rules and adopt the ordinance tonight.
All right, board members at this time have any questions of Mr. Parton? I think the one thing we had agreed during the budget process to move it from 50 to 100,000, and then we asked for, then I asked for 150,000. It seems like that's what I seem to recall. That's what Spotsylvania is at 150,000 is their minimum. They don't charge any. 200? Yeah, that's why I was going to 200. That's why we asked for 200. But at least it puts us a little closer. I did ask for 200. Yes, you're right. So, okay. So that's it. If there's no questions of Mr. Parton, I think the revenue that the county has at risk is $28,500, which is fairly minimal. I think we talked about that's kind of an investment in business to maybe that could be another person that gets hired or something of that nature, but it would give folks a chance to get started. So, having said that, we will declare the public hearing to be open for the amendment to Article 12, License Tax, Chapter 103. Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Hearing none, the public hearing is declared closed. Board members, discussion? Motion?
Make a motion that we accept the ordinance amending Article 7, license tax. Oh, I'm sorry, 12. License tax of Chapter 103, taxation of the Code of Caroline County, exempt the county license tax businesses with annual gross receipts of $150,000 or less.
Second.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Pompowitz, seconded by Mr. Seeley. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. We will move to agenda item number 10.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this item was actually deferred from your last board meeting to tonight. You received, I believe, a large handout prior to the last meeting from the All Good Music Festival. It was in a binder that was given to the board prior to, yes, sir. The request or the issue before the Board of Supervisors is whether the board wants to direct staff to prepare ordinance amendments related to any possible modifications to the festival permit provisions of the county code. You have two potential festival permits. One is the All Good Music Festival, as we previously discussed, as well as an organizer out of Richmond is looking at doing a two-day music festival. The venue for that would be the State Fair of Virginia Fairgrounds. The All Good Music Festival is actually proposed for a site off of Route 17 in the northern part of the county, and would be, I believe, it's a 3 to 4 day festival. Both requests actually are inconsistent with the current festival permit regulations, which limit concerts to 8 hours in any 24-hour period. I believe the requests are for 10 hours for one venue and up to 16 hours for the other venue, as well as other associated issues such as camping, etc. Before staff spent any time or significant time preparing and researching this item, we wanted to come to the board to get a determination from the board, one, whether you wanted to consider any amendments to the festival regulations at this time, and two, if so, what direction, if any, you had for staff in terms of possible amendments. And that is the sole purpose of this request before the Board of Supervisors.
And Mr. Fincham, you've had discussions with the applicant, or at least the All Good Music Festival and the State Fair folks, to some degree?
Yes. Basically, just a request. Did the festival permit allow this? The answer is no in both cases. You know, the request was initially precipitated by the All Good Music Festival folks, which I think have been looking at that site for some time. And that's basically the genesis of this request to the board.
Now, they're not here today, right?
Oh, yep.
Okay. Just in case we had any questions, or do you have a brief statement you'd like to say, just to make sure we understand your proposal? Brief brief being the operative word?
I want to say I appreciate you for considering this request. We have been putting on the All Good Music Festival for 15 years in various states. We started in Maryland, went to West Virginia, came to Virginia, and actually did one at Oakley Farm in Spotsylvania about 8 or 9 years back. At this point, we have grown to the point of throwing a world-class event with 35 to 40 nationally recognized touring acts. We're drawing up to 25,000 people right now. We've outgrown our site out in West Virginia, looking for a bigger site. The Moss Neck site definitely lends itself to allowing a crowd to spread out. They have 1,200 acres out there. It's more than twice the amount of property we would need for the 25,000, and we think we could throw a really safe and successful event out there. And at the same time, we think we could bring a lot of revenue to Caroline County. As you can see in our proposal, we brought upwards of probably over $2 million to the state of West Virginia through the revenues that were brought on by our patrons as they spent 4 days in the state. And locally in West Virginia, we think we could do the same for Caroline County. We hired probably 100 people locally. We spent $750,000 on local businesses. As far as our agenda coming in would be to hire as much local help as we can and to raise as much revenue as we can for the county. We typically, we raised 7,000 pounds of food for the Preston County Food Bank this past year. We would do a similar campaign for Caroline County. We tend to make generous donations to the nonprofits in the area, and we just think we could bring a lot of good to the county.
And you're Mr. Walter?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So that was Tim Walter of Walter Production. Okay. I'm just wondering, and I talked to Mr. Fincham about this briefly. I don't know if any other board members had an opportunity. Whereas Moss Neck may lend itself to having 25,000 people there, seems like the logistics of getting those 25,000 in and out could be a significant challenge.
I would agree that it's a challenge, but it's not a challenge that we cannot overcome. It's something we've done up in West Virginia, for instance. We processed those 25,000 people down a one-lane mountain road. We did so successfully. We found a way to do it. We have much better roadways in Caroline County. It's my understanding that there was a Boy Scout event that took place in the neighboring property of this property in Moss Neck that did over 30,000 children throughout the day or throughout the weekend. And I would suggest that we wouldn't bring any more traffic than they did, and we would make probably a much greater effort of planning in advance. We work with a nationally recognized traffic engineering company called Creighton and Manning. You'll find that in your packet. They've been experienced with bringing upwards of even 100,000 people to a festival in Bonnaroo and making that work for the community and for the roads that are used for that event. We would certainly work with the sheriff, get his advice on what would work best, and do our most, make our best efforts not to impact the community as far as the traffic is concerned.
Okay. But you would, it was my understanding, you would consider looking at the state fairgrounds as a possibility?
We have looked at the state fairgrounds, and it's just not big enough to take on our event.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. All righty. So if you don't use the state fairgrounds, that would mean the county would have to look at amending its festival permits, which would be a process. If you looked at the state fairgrounds, we could probably do that with a change or two to the, I don't know if it was the proffers or the restrictions we had on the state fair.
That would require an amendment to the special use permit
section.
Conditions related to the approval of the state fair.
Okay. This gentleman's with you too, right? The one that's just coming in?
Pardon?
Okay. All right. Does the board wish to look at modifying the festival permit, or wish to look at asking these folks to look at the state fair a little harder and see if that could work?
No on both accounts, Mr. Chairman. No, I don't. I do not wish to look at amending, and no, I do not wish to look at having the state fair.
Mr. Popowitz? I guess we could kind of just leave it at that.
Well, I respectfully disagree. I think that events like this are temporary events. They come in once a year. They bring in revenue, and I think it's worth our while to at least look at the change. And yes, on both accounts.
Mr. Seeley?
I think the first step would be to talk to the sheriff, the state police, and the state VDOT as entities, because my concern is 10,000 cars coming from either side of Route 17, either down 301 or from 95 through New Post. We would end up with endless lines I think we'd end up with endless lines of traffic each way, which would make it impossible for the sheriff's office or fire and rescue to do anything. And I'd like to see what the state police, the sheriff's office, and VDOT would have to say before I did anything. I'd like to see what their thoughts are and what they think those conditions would be like, because that road is already a service D. Scott, do you know what the level of service of 17 is in that particular section? Okay. I just think to be fair, we need to look at everything that would take place.
Okay. I'm going to say I'd like to look at a little more. You know, just Mr. Fincham, you haven't given us what the actual amendments would be or anything. It's just we know we'd have to make those changes.
That's correct. The current ordinance is an administrative permit by the Board of Supervisors.
Right.
And some of the issues I think Mr. Seeley raised typically are reviewed as part of the festival permit application. Public safety, traffic, sanitary sewage disposal are specified under the current festival permit, and any, I think, consideration of amendments to the permit would involve a review by all of those agencies to look at the appropriate amendments to the festival permit. Some jurisdictions have graduated permits. For example, they'll have categories of, say, 1,000 to 5,000, 5,001 to 15,000, with varying standards depending upon the size of the concert or the festival. Right now, our permit is a one-size-fits-all that the board, has vested itself with the approval authority regardless of whether it's 100 or 20,000. It comes to the board in the same manner and is handled as an administrative permit.
Okay, so we could do that. Let me ask Mr. Walter, why did you leave Spotsylvania? I think you were in Spotsylvania 2001 or something like that. Why'd you leave Spotsylvania?
We've had the fortunate situation of outgrowing sites rather quickly, and the first time we did show there, we were bush hogging grass as the event was going on to take on the 8,000 people that showed up. So we really maxed out that site the first year we did it. And if I could say something, I guess my concept, at least as far as the approach to Caroline County, was that the consideration of changing the ordinance for the amount of hours of music throughout the day would be just step one towards the county hosting an event such as mine. And I think that for the future, it could be good to amend that, whether we take it to step 2 or step 3 with the All Good Festival. I think that Caroline County having an ordinance that invites even smaller events to come to the county and bring revenue to the county would be a good thing. And I'm just putting out there today that it would be, again, just step 1 of many steps towards the All Good Festival coming to Caroline County if you were to amend that. By amending that, you would know better than me, but by amending that ordinance, you would not be saying yes to the All Good Festival or saying yes to the other event that is inquiring about doing a festival here.
Okay. I just did a Google search on some things for All Good, and they're not all good, but that's another
Right,
story.
that was mine. We listen to the good for each site, but there has to be some negative impact, which has not been mentioned tonight. You didn't mention anything. You talked about the number of people coming, the amount of revenue.
Right.
What are some of the negatives that have occurred from site to site, and some complaints that you've had?
I would say that one of the number one negatives to the community has been the traffic. And up in Marvin's Mountaintop in Masontown, West Virginia, having a one-lane road to work with is certainly quickly become problematic as we grew. The first festival we did there, we did 2,500 people, so we've gotten 10 times as large in the last 9 years as far as the event that takes place out there. I do believe that the roadways I can definitely see that the roadways are a lot better here, are a lot more manageable. We can bring in people from 3 or 4 different directions. We can, we communicate very clearly with our fan base. We can suggest which way, we want them to go, and they'll listen, they'll respond accordingly.
And I can tell you that 30,000 Boy Scouts are different than 30,000 adults drinking alcohol.
But as far as the traffic is concerned, I would say that
I'm just making that point,
identical.
so you understand. So you're
There
comparing
will
it to
be-
AP Hill
Yeah.
and the Boy Scouts. I think you have to
Correct.
agree that 30,000 adults is different than 30,000 Boy Scouts.
Correct. And what I would say to that is that, once we get them on the site, we take very good care of them, and you won't have to worry about them. We get them inside there. You won't even know they're there at that site. You'll drive by, and you'll be able to see parked cars from a distance, and the rest will be inside and handled by us.
I've got an old bridge I'd like to sell you after this meeting.
A bridge?
I've got an old bridge I'd like to sell you after this meeting.
All right.
Mr. Walter, I'm old enough to know of Woodstock. Not old enough that I was there, but I'm old enough to know. I have that impression of your event. Is that a bad impression or the wrong impression or what?
I'd say that's a bad impression because Woodstock was completely mismanaged, overrun, and not a public, safe place for people to be. And we've worked for 15 years from doing 900 people at our first event to fine-tuning a team of, we had 1,250 employees this year and 500 volunteers, and we run a really tight ship. And without being at our event, you wouldn't know that, but we've become one of the strongest events of this type in the country, and it's become more and more competitive, and really the strong and the well-managed events rise to the top and stay at the top, and that's where we're going to try to maintain ourselves.
Does the name Nicole Miller mean anything to you?
Yes, she does.
Okay. Apparently that was this year?
Correct.
Okay. She was a young 20-year-old woman who was killed at your event when a truck crashed into her tent?
That is correct. That was a very tragic incident that I really can't say anything else about as far as taking advice from my lawyer. It's not something I can speak about in public.
Three threads down, there's a lawsuit, so I don't expect you to say anything. I just wanted to know if you were aware of that. Okay. We will ask Mr. Fincham to at least prepare what festival changes you thought would be appropriate, and then I think the board will definitely deliberate whether we would like to proceed with a festival change or not, but if you could get us those before our November meeting, I'm sure we'll have a chance to discuss them a little bit more. All right? Mr. Walter, thank you so much for your time and for being here.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay. You have a good evening now. Okay. I'm sure we will we'll look at what your festival changes would be first before we even get to this particular issue. Because he wanted us to update the festivals, period.
Well, what I would suggest is that you allow me to give some options for the board.
That's fine.
Okay.
Sounds good. Okay. Agenda item number 11 is a discussion of possible creation of a service district in the Caroline Pines service area. And is that Mr. Schiebel? Mr. Schiebel, you have number 11. I hadn't gotten that up yet. I was still on the Google search, so I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Wait, you
I'll
want me to read it so I can call your name
Do you
specifically?
want me to stay here? You want me to go down there?
Stay wherever you.
I'll be brief.
It says presenter Ann Neal Cosby, County Attorney. Ms. Cosby, good to see you again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will just go over some of the criteria if the board would like to consider adoption of a service district. It's not my intent to get into any of the legal ramifications, obviously, in an open meeting. And there are other alternatives, you know, but I've only been asked to address the service district, so that's what I'm going to talk about. But in order to, the county can adopt a service district in one particular area of the county if it wants to provide, among other things, utilities, that it isn't, that are at a rate or are over and above what's being, publicly available elsewhere. So if there are additional construction costs or maintenance costs, the service district could be adopted in order to pay for those additional costs. And so an ordinance is adopted, the service district is established. The district can be established before all of the specifics to the district are really determined. The service district raises money by basically imposing an additional tax on the property owners that are in that district that would be adjacent to, in this case, a water line. So those who would be utilizing that water service would pay additional tax that's based on whatever percentage based on their property value. And it could be for all of, an improvement, for a portion of the improvement. It's whatever is unique to the service district, that's over and above the general services for the rest of the county. Again, it has to, the service district can't be established, to pay for something that really should be shared by everybody. But where there are special improvements that are specific to the area, those could be paid for through the service district and through the special assessment on those properties. And so the assessment is rendered like any other tax. So it's, the amount of the tax is reported to the Commissioner of the Revenue and then the treasurer, and it's generally, in the same, collected and imposed in the same manner. Those monies are then segregated into as a fund that's separate for that district, and then they're used to pay for the improvements or for maintenance of the improvements, so that again those monies are used only within the service district. As to how the tax is imposed, once the service district is established, and then the governing body, whether that's the Board of Supervisors or whomever is going to be the board for that district, they can establish a committee or direct staff or otherwise work out what the appropriate fee would be within that district. So you can establish a district first, and then the powers, the service district can act pursuant to its powers, and so you can figure out what would be appropriate. What's the cost of the improvements? How should what portion of that, or all of it, should be paid by the members, the residents in the district, and how it's going to be, separated amongst them. So in order to establish the district, notice is given in the newspaper. It has to be advertised for 3 weeks instead of your normal 2 weeks. So it's something that if the board, wanted to move forward, it takes a little bit a little bit longer, but, you could certainly get that process moving forward and then, work out the specifics later or do it all at one time. It's at whatever the board feels is more appropriate.
Okay, I have a question, because I think it was the board, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. I think it was the board's intention to look at this mainly to protect the county from any unexpected expenditures there, such as once we start running county water through those old pipes, we don't know if those pipes will be able to handle the additional pressure or what, and I think our district was geared to put those costs on the people using that system.
Right.
So my question is it possible that we say, whatever the rate is, that we say we have this special service district and we raise $100,000 via tax or whatever, special assessment, and then we don't tax them again until we use that money? Can we, in other words, can we turn a charge on and off at will?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
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 From my
And so
understanding.
yes. Every year the service district would determine, what amount should be levied. And so if there aren't improvements or maintenance costs for that particular year, then it wouldn't impose the tax that year.
So we could say-
Conversely, if there, one year you did
Right.
need to, spend significant amounts to fix the,
Right.
the utility, you could raise the rate. So it can go up and down.
And Mr. Underwood, I believe you had a meeting with the folks at Caroline Pines, and they seem to be agreeable to this.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Shebel and I met with the members of the board for the Caroline Pines, and our discussion was really to ensure that we were protecting other members of the county so that they wouldn't have to pay for services within Caroline Pines if there was a catastrophic break. And this would ensure that the money that was raised in Caroline Pines would be used there. So that would protect the citizens within Caroline Pines also, to give them an avenue for repairs and replacement, those types of things. So we thought it would be the best of both worlds for the other parts of the county and for the citizens of Caroline Pines.
I think in that sense it looks like a win-win. Mr. Pappas, do you have a comment on that?
If Mr. Sheba will be kind enough to come on up. I think I've asked this question before, but I'm going to ask it again. What kind of lines do we have in that facility? Do we know?
Anything from electrical conduit to irrigation pipe to a majority of it is Schedule 40 PVC glue joint, which is typically the issue is the glue joints. The plastic pipe isn't that bad. It's really the joints. And they do have a couple thousand feet of C900.
Okay. Have we gone as far as to maybe put together a phase plan for replacement of some of these bad sections already?
We've looked at some of the issues that we know that are out there to replace some of that under the current funding to be able to bring back to the board. But we haven't had, as we don't own the system, we haven't actually been in and evaluated each of the lines and try to determine what each class is in each run of line so that we can try to determine that information.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I think, thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. I think under the circumstances with the types of lines and things that we're seeing in there, that this is probably wholly appropriate. I think, though, I would feel good about it if we put together a phase plan for when we're going to replace and those types of things, so that we could put together a set amount of capital account under this facility, so that we could replace these things, and then we'd know we have a good system once we're done, and at that time maybe remove the special district if that's appropriate.
I mean,
Well,
you can
that's the
leave
purpose
that.
of-
That
that's
was
the
the
purpose
question
of-
I asked
Right, that's what
first.
right.
We
be
can
doing that.
impose a charge.
Sure.
To make sure we go through the replacement, and then after whatever time frame that is, say, okay, we've got X number of dollars in the bank in case something happens. We don't need to have that charge for the next year or the next whatever.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I'm getting at is I'd like to see in that agreement or in that facility that we specifically say we're going to improve these lines, and this is the reason why we're doing it, et cetera, so that we have a plan for that and we know, not only for the citizens, but for our own sake, what we're going to be doing in the next 5 years or 6 years, whatever. That's what I'm getting.
And some of that, according to what Mr. Shebel said, we won't be able to really know until we actually own the system.
Understood.
So it's probably like a multi-phase.
Yes.
One, we get X amount of dollars to say, in case something goes wrong, we've got $50,000 ready to go. Then we look at the next step of, we're going to replace, would you say it was 5,000 feet? No, more than that. 2,000 feet? 9,000 feet. I was listening.
Right now, we said there was C900. There's about 2,000 feet of C900 that was in. We're replacing the line going through the front entrance to the clubhouse is being replaced as part of this project. One of the things we looked at was not setting the district up, but not charging any fees until after the 5th year, because they're going to be paying back the $2,800 availability fee every month at $46.67. And we'll have enough accumulated funds if there was an issue over that first 5 years from collecting that $2,800 to be able to cover any difference. And then after that 5 years, their bill's basically going to drop down to about $35 a month. If we would have charged $10 a month, round numbers, if it averaged out to $10, that would give us about $50,000 per year. So over 5 years, you'd have $250,000 that we could then start a replacement program. And you would have every 5 years $250,000 to start upgrading those lines.
Okay, but now you're saying the first 5 years they're going to be paying back the connection fee,
Availability fee of $2,800.
the availability fee. But once I turn the water on in that first 5 years, that's where we thought the biggest risk was for problems.
That's correct. If you actually look at the schedule values that we accumulate, that $1 million over that first 5 years, and the debt service that's going into that, we'll have well over $500,000 at the end of 5 years accumulated. We'll be paying that debt back over that period of time.
Okay, but that's Mrs. Hatcher's here. That's going to be a fiscal management issue, because I'm using that availability fee to pay my debt service.
That's correct.
So if I have to use that availability fee for repairs, who's going to pay my debt service?
The way the debt service is actually laid out, that money is set there every month, and it shows you the accumulative effect of us accumulating the availability fee each month compared to the debt service each month.
Right.
And then after that 5 year period, then we would be able to assess if we wanted to put on an additional tax. Would be a good time to do that. It's not saying that's what we have to do, but since they will each be paying in round numbers about $75 a month for their water bill, it was thought after that 5 years we would accumulate enough revenue to be able to take care of a catastrophic event, and then after that period we could drop that level down to on a reasonable amount. They're paying $35 a month. Our average water bill is $25 a month. So kind of what we talked about is $10 a month would bring them where they are now, and we start accumulating money to start a replacement and repair program.
Okay. I would like to see, I don't know if anybody else would like to see, but I'd like to, and you probably did this for us before, but just in case, I'd like to see again the availability fees, what they are, times the number of houses, what the debt service is per year, because I got to factor in, there's going to be, not everybody's going to pay.
Yes, sir.
Not everybody's going to, keep their payments up. There's going to be some people, as we know in other places, all over it. It's not the Dawn wastewater system. It's Belmont. It's, Ladysmith Village. It happens everywhere.
Would you like to see that now?
We have the numbers.
And you have debt service numbers now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'd like to see those, please.
I think we should see.
And then we could take those. If we're sure that in the first 5 years the availability fee collection will cover whatever catastrophic event we could have, then I would have no problem in saying in 5 years we're going to go with, or we'll create the replacement plan and then see what we do in 5 years.
Right, Mr. Chairman, and that's what we kind of looked at when we met with them, and we talked about what would be considered a catastrophic breakage in the water system.
Oh my gosh.
And so we looked at it, and based on the numbers and, again, the collection,
Wait a minute, I
the
think I
fees
got it.
that we collect and the debt service that we would service,